prepared some examples.
Recording is on.
Here. Wow, that was freaky. So an example here is, you might be interested for speaking to your when speaking to your customer about information about competitors, about their market, about things that you've talked about or presented in previous meetings. And so there's a number of products out in the market that are kind of SaaS offerings. So example one being Clue, example two being Crayon, and you can just literally Google sales battle cards and you'll see hundreds of SaaS offerings for this kind of solution. That is, sorry, excuse the background noise. That's the kind of premise of how I imagine a Chrome extension or a plugin could work in the same context. So as you can see, this little illustration here from Clue, which is, they have a Chrome plugin. When you're on a web page that you're reading that has a climate climate information, or the topic is related to climate change, you could either press the button or it automatically presents you with a card that has facts related to the topic that you're looking at online. There's an additional sort of element to this as well, which is thinking about how to make that information more memorable. And there's lots of kind of research that's been done around education and flashcards, and that by seeing the information in a sort of concise format, being able to easily digest that information, it makes it easier to remember. And obviously the kind of repetition element has part to play in that as well. We'll kind of get onto this in a moment, but I was thinking as well as what some feedback could be for a user of the plugin, and encourage them to kind of to keep using it and to keep pressing that button. There's perhaps some kind of gamification around rewards on, perhaps you can take a quiz or test your climate change knowledge. And I was just chatting with Alice earlier today. There's another group that has an education app run by Billy, I think, Billy Zhang, which is around that exact use case. So educating people on climate facts. So there's potentially elements of that we could bring into this as well. The only difference being that it's kind of in the place of where you're reading potential misinformation. From a more technical perspective, the way that I was imagining we could do this is by taking the information that's on the page, by parsing a URL. And we have a tool that allows us to parse the text that's on a page, and then extract other things like titles and images and other features. The keywords as well being obviously quite important. I'm just showing it here an example from a CMS that we built for a client that uses the Scheme Engine API. That could potentially, this is kind of shows you how the content is broken down. And my idea was that you could take the content that's on the page and match it against the GRIST data set. So we talked about GRIST last time, but for those of you that are new, let me just show you what that looks like. So GRIST is the kind of, it's a very well policed and I think relatively open source set of answers to climate skeptics or climate deniers. So it's very, very well set out. There's a lot of information that's concisely written out, that we could identify the answers from this page, and we could do some classification to the topic of the page that the person's looking at. Alex, who was in the group last week, who can't join today unfortunately, but has posted some comments in the Slack group, said he also thinks there could be quite a simple kind of matching algorithm, or maybe not simple, but a matching algorithm which essentially matches these fact cards to the content that's on the page that the person's looking at. So let me just find the page I was on. Sorry. So that's kind of the basis of the idea. I talked about some kind of reinforcement stuff here, gamification. So these are some ideas maybe we can pull on today, pull on that thread and see if there's anything more that people have as a suggestion. Be interested to hear Harriet's perspective as well. Sounds like you're a bit of a professional in this area. And then, yeah, maybe we can get into the technical approach a little bit as well with James or Mohammed or Ankush might have some views, or anyone else on that. And then it would be good to kind of identify, we've got some people that are returning today and some people that are new, but to try and identify, you know, from this group and perhaps the wider group as well, any roles that we think would be good for people to take on and actually have some kind of takeaway homework that we can do over the next couple of weeks, because this group meets every 2 weeks. So obviously that's quite good in the sense that we have enough time to kind of prep stuff in between, but it means that we're not, you know, we don't have as much time to kind of have these sorts of meetings, but we do have the Slack channel as well. So you know, any day-to-day communication can also happen on there. Any questions at this point, or ideas to share? I think we've got a new joiner. Hi, Chris.
Hey guys. Nice to see you. Sorry I'm late.
Yeah, no problem. Were you on the session the last session as well?
No, I'm a newbie.
All right. Okay. Do you want to just briefly introduce yourself and your sort of area of expertise for this?
Sure. I've dropped the camera. My connection seems a little bit wobbly, so I'm hoping that if I'm not transmitting video, it will help. So my name's Chris Poynton. I'm sort of a software leader, I guess. You know, I'm the CTO of a company that does activity tracking called Racefully. I'm also involved with a voluntary group in Cambridge where I live called Cambridge the Climate Emergency. And we're collecting emissions data around Cambridge to build a map-based approach to get people talking about carbon reduction. I'm not really an AI person. I'm aware of it, but I'm coming on and learning what people are up to and hopefully understanding a bit more about what people are doing with data around this area.
Great, thanks very much. Yeah, for your benefit, Chris, I was just giving a brief update on what we discussed last week, which was to do with the misinformation product that we're looking at around detecting or matching facts from a library of facts online to misinformation that somebody might be looking at in real time on a screen. Using a Chrome plugin or some kind of browser extension that would allow that person to see what I'm calling a climate battle card, a sort of fact sheet on what's actually truth around that particular topic that they're reading. Does anyone have any sort of comments on that overview at this stage?
I thought that was fantastic, and I really like the sales. I like the sales tool and the sales lens that you put on it as well. I had one thought, which was that as well as like if you try and if you try and directly rebut a denier, sometimes what you're doing is arguing with somebody in the kind of terms and frames that they've set. So there's an argument, I think, perhaps for having a layer on top of this grist kind of. I wasn't aware of it. It's amazing. I've just had a quick look, but around kind of framing. So, for example, if the argument is, the climate is always changing. If you argue, well, no, the climate isn't always changing. sometimes that can create, like, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? And what we've been advocating is that you then reframe the argument to a different, a slightly different kind of plane, which might be, no, the climate isn't always changing, and why on earth would we want to take that risk? So you elevate and change the conversation slightly, because we find that sometimes what happens is people to go down a rabbit hole of trying to prove to somebody that their point is right, when actually if they reframed, you change the argument completely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess from a technical perspective, do we have anyone who's sort of specialist in NLP or has an idea on any of that kind of side of things, from a kind of text rewriting or abstractive summarization or anything like that?
I have started getting an introduction in this MLP and NLP, and started working in, but I am really at the initial stage. But I, for example, looked into the message that, for example, Alex sent on the Slack chat, and I kind of understand it up to some level, and it seems that would be a nice way to go.
Yeah. Okay. Because I guess from the framing perspective, it kind of comes down to your point, Harriet, on how we turn this data, right? So this is the facts data, right? How we turn that into something that is concise and framed to the argument against what somebody's reading online, what the misinformation is. So that's what I was wondering on the kind of NLP capability perspective. But at a basic level, it's kind of.
So the question is whether you can summarize like a longer text into something shorter.
I know that's possible, but in terms of framing it to like changing the wording, I guess, in a way that would be persuasive or around the argument of the argument against the misinformation that somebody's looking at online.
Yeah, I guess it's still a hard problem, but I don't know, like with the latest GPT-3 research, maybe it's kind of achievable today.
Yeah, I mean, GPT-3
that's the only kind of hope. Because the simple kind of like, topic analysis wouldn't really help you here, I think. I mean, the simpler algorithms would just like try to match it, one kind of intent or one sentiment to another sentiment, which would be very similar, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, we've done quite a lot with summarization in the past. There's you can do like text rank summarization, which would effectively take the. Let me find the page again. Sorry. It would take each sentence here. Sorry, each sentence, and then it would score each sentence for its value to the context of the entire document, and then based on that, you could reduce by a kind of percentage. So you might get like line 1, line 3, line 7, and line 12 that creates the summary. But then with GPT-3, you have abstractive summarization now, but you have to train that on, we'd have to train that on a kind of on this subset of kind of climate fact data. But I've never, my company's certainly never done that kind of thing before. We've done it with like contracts and leases and stuff, but not with kind of, I guess, a reading style or a kind of persona to the text. But from what I've seen online, I think it is possible. The people are writing new songs and poems and things like that using GPT-3. So does anyone want to take that as a kind of research task and see kind of what the capabilities are of GPT-3 or abstractive summarization and kind of understand what we could do with this data as a starting point, and how we could format the cards, I guess, in terms of we're assuming we can match them, but what would we do with how would we create the content for the card? Is it just a kind of text rank summary, or could we do something more intelligent with GPT-3 that makes the information in the card easier to understand? Maybe Ankush, did you say you have a bit of experience in this space?
Yeah, I think I can start looking into it for sure.
Okay, that'd be great. So then the other thing is the matching as well, in terms of matching misinformation with this data set. Alex put in the group already. Just trying to find his comment here if anyone hasn't seen it. So a few thoughts on how we might proceed, if you know, if useful. Yeah, so it's basically a mapping exercise, which perhaps is, he's put Boolean vectors here, but maybe it's this kind of classification task or something like that. Anyone have a more technical view on that, James or Ankush or Mahmood, someone like that?
It could be something like if you're trying to find in a random article, you're trying to find if some text matches with the questions which are on this GRIST website. Mm-hmm. Could be some kind of similarity analysis, I guess, and that I'm pretty sure exists. There is existing data set for that, and at least the previous model bot has been trained on it pretty intensively.
Which one was that, sorry?
It's like I think there's something about similarity analysis, which is like how similar two sentences are, and if you're trying to find out that in a random, as I could understand, you wanted to say, like, if you want to see if in a certain random website it matches with some question that has been asked on GRIST, then we can, I guess it's pretty simple to do something like a similarity analysis of all the text and then see which one matches with whichever question that has been asked on this website.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Ankush. I guess in terms of, so that's kind of thinking about the data matching and thinking about the how we might present the text in the battle cards, but might be interesting to sort of think about the sort of Chrome extension element. We've got a couple of software developers, I think. Was it Mohammed and Chris, and I think that was it for now. But I guess, have either of you experience in building Chrome extensions or Firefox extensions, Safari extensions, that kind of thing? And we also probably need to think about the architecture as well, and how we might run something like this that's kind of low cost and fast. I guess we want the Chrome extension to kind of pop up quite quickly on the page, which will obviously come down to the URL parsing, but also the matching. So the models obviously need to be run in the cloud, and I guess some kind of Google Cloud platform setup or something like that would make sense. Anyone with expertise in that area?
I haven't worked with any extension previously, but it's something that I could definitely have a look into and see what I could do.
Okay, that'd be great. Add some names here to things so that kind of have that side of things. Has anyone got experience with design and how this product could look from a design perspective, and looking at UX as well, which is obviously going to be important. Anyone want to have a stab at it? But that could be a requirement for that we put out to the community, and see if how does that work, Alice? Can we kind of?
Yeah, I think we can just like nominate people afterwards if no one in the group right now is kind of like available or kind of ready to commit. I think we have definitely a lot of design experience in our community. I was just wondering, like, because it's very specific, if we want to like build like a browser extension or some sort of like plugin, it's kind of like specific UX skills that you need. So maybe we will need to kind of add it to the description, I guess.
Yeah. I guess there is probably the same principles, though. So hopefully a UX designer from another field could. Yeah,
or maybe like a front end person who has some UX experience.
Yeah,
would be great. Yeah, maybe we can combine it too.
Okay.
There is a parallel UX for Good community and Slack channel.
Oh, nice.
Which might be a good place to go fishing for that. I'm on that group.
Cool.
I'm not a UX person. I've just been shamelessly trawling for UX people to help with my stuff as well. But happy to put a call out there.
Okay. Is there anything? So Ankush is going to look at the sort of the capabilities around GPT-3, and feel free to look at other things as well. Ankush, James is another data scientist on the call. Just wondering if there's anything that you think would be worth your research time looking into that would benefit this project.
Yeah, I mean, I can have maybe work in parallel there, have a look at some of the text matching and the like, and just have a think around that area, around matching is probably going to be a fairly key aspect. So.
Yeah, so it's kind of sort of research requirements from a technical perspective, maybe the matching grist with information online, how to present the grist text in slides, full card format. So there's still a question around architecture. So that's going to need somebody maybe from the last group. I think Alex maybe is somebody who has experience with that. I can't really remember from the last call, but I think there were a couple of people that may be able to help on that, so we can try and address that via Slack and see if there's any support there. What other avenues of this do we need to be considering? Any thoughts from anyone?
So just to let you know, Ben is kind of leaving us. He joined briefly and has to jump to another meetup, but he says that he has some experience with Full Fact, which is a fact-checking organization for 6 months on UX and front-end development, so an API. So pretty cool. Yeah, it might be helpful.
Yeah. Sorry, Alex?
He said he'll join our Slack and I'll add him to the channel.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I think that the main thing I'm trying to get to at this point is if we can identify some roles and some takeaway tasks, so that we kind of make the most of the time that we have between these meetings. I
would say like what would be really interesting to do as a task as well is basically see who might be the users for this particular technology, and perhaps, you know, Harriet or anyone else like who has experience in this area. Basically, if you guys know anyone who would be interested to, you know, participate in the user testing user interview kind of like call or something, so we can just learn more about, you know, how people experience these things at the moment, are there any kind of similar tools or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, we know that a really key moment of truth, if you like, for lots of people who are questioning climate change, or like, you know, is this really a problem? Where can I learn more? Is forums. And we find that actually that's the point where you get a lot of denial and delay, kind of trolls, you know, kind of whatever, bad actors, whatever, kind of sitting on those forums and waiting for someone to ask a question and then sending them, you know, to the deniers, as it were. We know that's a kind of key point. So I think I can see, you know, kind of people who you know, kind of go to forums and have these conversations as a key user group. And I think I love the idea of this. You know, I don't know. I just think this could be really, really helpful, and I'm sure that there's groups of people, and perhaps even like existing communities, like you know, Stop Funding Hate has spun off Stop Funding Heat, for example. So they're already an engaged community of people who go out there and take action on social around this stuff. So yeah, I think I don't have a lot of capacity because I run a voluntary organisation in my spare time, but I can make introductions if that's helpful for this project.
That would be very helpful. Okay.
And maybe like there's
it's
simple
like,
stuff we can do with the forums. So for example, like it's not the first time I think we hear about these forums and Reddit and stuff like that. So maybe there's some quick, you know, user survey or user poll, I don't know, we can do just to test the idea. Or like learn something about the, you know, how people engage and how they interact in the space.
What was the name of one of those forums, Harriet?
So it's everything from Reddit is one of them, but then there's like Yahoo Answers, we know is a key one. Piston Heads Forum is another one. You know, and I think you'll find even on Quora and things like that. Yeah.
That is a good one. What was the action against heat? What was that reference?
It was Stop Funding Heat. I think they might be a good community for you because they're a group of people that have already, you know, kind of made change online through this kind of stuff.
Okay. That's cool. That's really useful.
There's also a hashtag climate brawl, I think, and that is a campaign to get you know, kind of people who are pro climate to get out of their echo chambers and start taking on people who they see spreading denial and delay messaging online. And I think that's really important because when we do social listening analyses, we see that, like, you know, kind of pro climate change people talk to themselves and deniers talk to everybody. So that's a kind of key thing to change.
So yeah, kind of a takeaway from this then would be to start getting into some of these communities and testing the idea and see. I guess fundamentally, would somebody install a plugin that's going to teach them, you know, to you know, climate facts or to question the misinformation that they're potentially reading. This was something we debated last week as well. It's kind of, if the person is already a climate believer, then it's going to be much easier to encourage them to install this kind of an extension. If they're a skeptic or a denier, then they're going to be it's probably going to be near impossible to get them to install it, which is where we got to the point that actually this is about empowering and providing these battle cards for the climate believers, so they can go into their community and have those more informed conversations.
Yes, and I can see too, like, just don't forget that like hardcore deniers and hardcore believers are like tiny percentages of the population sitting at polar opposites. Most of your people in the middle, like most people believe that climate change, are worried about climate change. It's about, I think it's up to about 83%, but most people actually don't think it's man-made. It doesn't stop people being really worried about it. So, you know, I think your audience perhaps is, there's two jobs to be done. Perhaps it's to arm the hardcore believers to, you know, and encourage them to get out there and have those tough conversations. But then maybe it's also a little tool for those who don't really know what, you know, the questioners, to actually educate themselves in the right way, as opposed to getting sent to James Delingpole.
Yeah. Okay. The question is and determine if they. Okay. There's probably loads of other questions that kind of fall out of that, but the sort of general theme is can we find, if we kind of plug in some of those communities and speak to some of those people, essentially kind of test the idea and whether this is something that people could see themselves using. So that would be, yeah, Harriet, if you can make any introductions, or if anyone else wants to kind of nominate themselves for carrying out some of that research. Sorry?
I was wondering, Rob has already left, I think.
Rob's here.
Oh, no, he's here. Rob, yeah. What do you think? Because you mentioned you had some experience working with Greenpeace. So, yeah, maybe like through this experience, you met some people.
Yeah, more of a supporter, really. But
okay.
I do see quite clearly what they try to do and the way they tackle individual campaigns and individual parts of the overall big picture. But very often when you talk to other people about it, everybody says, oh, there's nothing you can do. It's basically, China's got to fix this because they're so big. And that, I've heard that a lot of times. And so a simple way to graphically, you know, on something the size of a business card or a playing card, to graphically show, okay, yeah, China is a big part of the problem, and China, on the other hand, is actually per head doing a lot better than we are.
Yeah,
and we're still quite a big part of the problem. And if we provided, you know, that led the way, then they would follow anyway. And to a large extent, they are leaning the way. But, you know, to show that there are things that we can do which can make a very significant difference, and also would provide then the techniques and the tools to allow everybody else to do the same. And so a way to sort of graphically challenge that would be really good.
Yeah. Okay. That's
I think perhaps pointing to things like Yahoo Answers and basically the comment sections on lots of YouTube videos and things, that there are a number of just put downs really that are shown over and over again, and coming up with a card that answers each of those would be massively valuable, I'd have thought.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be part of the challenge as well from a technical perspective, is finding, like you mentioned, you mentioned YouTube comments, and so that's kind of goes back to the technical team and like, is a page that we can extract enough content from that we can find, you know, the topic that's being talked about to be able to present the kind of the correct fact for that topic. And I think the kind of success of this this product comes down to that that one point. Is like, can you effectively match facts to the misinformation on any given type of sites, whether it's Reddit, YouTube, a news page, whatever it is. So I think that's, there's two things that we really need to kind of clarify before we kind of take any meaningful steps forward with this, and that is that we need to identify technically whether it's going to be possible. My hunch, and having spent a few years in this field of kind of URL parsing, text extraction, and summarization, is that it is possible. And definitely, if we need more NLP kind of expertise, I can ask some of my team if they would be willing to kind of help in their spare time on this as well. So can definitely bring in NLP expertise if we need it, or just even as a sounding board for anyone else who wants to kind of pick up some NLP and do a bit of learning. And then the second question is, are people going to install it and use it? So if we can cross off those two questions with absolute certainty, then I think we've got a winning product here that's going to make a big difference. So it's I think the next 2 weeks should really be focused on trying to get answers to those two fundamental questions, and then we can start to tackle the questions around how we're going to actually build it, the architecture, and what software we're going to use, and all the rest of it. Would people generally agree with that? Any comments?
Just not quite on your answer. Got a couple. I'm a little bit slow to respond, but I was looking for something to Rob's point. I'm just going to share it in the chat. There was a good piece in the conversation a little while ago about to the point of, oh well, there's no point doing anything because China hasn't done anything. There's a really good article and site link beyond that, and the conversation about just sort of how to deal with climate, not so much climate denial as climate delay. So it's more like sweeping it under the carpet type of stuff. So that might be quite interesting. On a broader question, I wondered to what extent, because I'm coming to this late and I apologize, we've actually looked around for other solutions to the same problem before we go and build one. I was
Yeah.
I was just looking, as RAND has a list of disinformation fighting resources.
Okay.
And there's tons of them. One I thought was interesting was Try Verify. If you search to that page for extensions, some of them are more to do with sort of adware and that kind of things. But if you sort of dig a bit further through, there are some fact-checking tools. No idea how good or bad they are. No idea how effective or instantaneous they are. It would be well worth doing a bit of research to see either if there's something that we can use that's sort of broadly in the domain but could be tweaked, or just something we can simply use before we, much as everyone likes to go and build things, it's always worth checking someone hasn't already thought of it and built it much better than you did in the first one.
Very true. And if there might be some open source work happening in that space that we can contribute to as well, to that point.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. It's cool. I've not come across rand.org. Cool. Okay, that's a very good point. So that's kind of another question. Has it been done for exists today? Would store use it?
And I think that there is possibly, from the conversation we're having, an opportunity. That it's one thing to fact check; it's another thing to prompt an action about what finding that misleading information. It's like you're not supposed to feed the trolls, but maybe there are things we can do. We can prompt people to do to at least redress the balance a little bit. For sure. On that point, actually, some of the things that I thought were interesting. So there was a comment in the notes from the AI for Good community. I was kind of reading through this a couple of weeks ago. Someone was talking about find it being able to educate people. Oh, this is the whole on. I can't find it. What was it? What was my point? Oh yeah, direct calls to action, right? So if somebody's installed the extension, they're using it, they're reading the battle cards, they're finding it engaging. What can we do additionally to kind of to help that person become, an activist or become more activated in their community? So there's kind of this idea of providing, power users, effectively, people who we know are definitely engaged with the product and finding it useful, with calls to action. So this might be things like signing a petition. It might be writing a letter to their MP. It might be changing a habit. So stop buying a certain product or that kind of thing. I think it has to be done very subtly because we don't want to be sort of bombarding people with way too much, with kind of over actions to take that then kind of put them off doing anything because they're kind of paralyzed by this idea of having to do too many things and being put off by that. But yeah, definitely think like subtle nudges or pushes in the right direction. Like you're reading this topic, there happens to be a petition related to that, sign up here. And some other things like improving your knowledge around memory and quizzes. I talked about that earlier as well. Like if somebody's been using the product, perhaps you can see a history of all of the facts that you've read, and then we can kind of create a quiz from that, like a memory game that someone can choose to play or to take later on, which I think ties back to Billy's product a little bit. Alice, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I tested it last year. We had like this group working on this chatbot quiz. So it was like a very simple way to check your awareness or your knowledge on climate. So it was like a very simple quiz, and actually I really liked it. I think I still have it on my phone somewhere, so I might be able to share it with you guys. But it's a really cool way to just interact with information, because like any chatbot, it just interacts with you, so it like constantly replies back. And there's a funny way I think that they developed. So at first, like it just asks you some simple question. And then if you reply kind of like in the wrong way or in a kind of correct way, it still kind of gives you some factual information. So you learn every time you kind of like answer a question. And at first you're a little bit like intimidated because you're like, oh my God, I don't want to expose myself. But then you realize it's just a chatbot. So there's no one on the other end. So you're like, okay, fine. I can, be myself, not pretend that I'm knowledgeable of everything. So it's like a very interesting way, I think, to quiz people. So we can totally just kind of like ask Billy if he's, I think he will be happy for you guys to use it. Because
maybe it's even just like a link to the product from the extension if somebody's kind of wanting to get more from the product at that stage.
Yeah.
I like the idea of kind of, with bookmarks and stuff, you go back and you can go to your bookmark view and you can see all of the things that you've saved. It would be quite a nice feature to have that with your battle cards, and you can see all of the facts that you've supposedly learned that have popped up, and you can kind of go back and check them and reread them and stuff like that. But we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. So I think like the takeaways from today really are around doing a bit more research into the users, into the tech capability, and then as Chris very rightly points out, you know, the sort of competitor landscape, or if products like this exist already. Is that something, Chris, that you want to take away and do? Self-volunteering?
I'm going to not volunteer for that, I'm afraid. Okay. I'm trying to get this carbon map project out, which is pretty much all of my volunteer bandwidth and quite a bit of my non-volunteer bandwidth at the moment. Okay. So I'm sorry not to be helpful on this occasion. But,
no problem, it's fine. I can take that on and look at that myself. It's no problem. Okay. Is there anything else that we want to kind of go over today? Any other ideas that are completely different to this that anyone wants to kind of raise and mention?
I don't.
Okay.
But perhaps maybe like, yeah, if you guys want to kind of think about the, you know, the tasks that I think Jack really nicely put together, and kind of like perhaps decide later if you want to kind of like help or support with any of those tasks, please just, yeah, you know, follow up on Slack. I think it's kind of cool if we will just continue collaborating on Slack throughout the week. So we don't wait for the next meetup in 2 weeks. Yeah.
I'll sort of write this up a little bit better, this document, and share it in Slack as well. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, let's just kind of use this as a working document. I think maybe eventually we can move on to Trello or something if we get that far in terms of kind of breaking out tasks. But I think let's kind of answer these fundamental questions initially, and then in the next session have a clearer idea of a way forward, and especially interested to hear from kind of Ankush and James on the technical side of things, and see who Harriet might be able to introduce to help with some of the research in the user groups and communities that she's talked about. And I think there's people that joined last week that might be able to help with some of that as well, who I think she called Ella, who seemed to have was involved with some climate communities as well. So I'll sort of share some more stuff. Yeah, share some more stuff on Slack, and it'll be interesting to speak to Ben as well. Sounds like he might have some very relevant experience with fact checking.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of people in our climate action group. So you can post there as well. I think there was like a lady who was connected to Extinction Rebellion, and she was really keen to help as well. So I can reach out to her and just ask if she can just, I don't know, point us into the right direction and stuff like that. So yeah, there are lots of people we can ask for help, I think.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay. If there's nothing else from anyone that they'd like to raise, then we'll just meet in 2 weeks' time and crack on with the work in this document.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Sure.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good evening.